Okay, let's start with a brief meditation. Close your eyes. Find a good posture. And think thoughts of goodwill, metta. It's a wish for happiness. Because true happiness comes from within. Genuine goodwill doesn't create any conflict if you wish it for anybody. Your true happiness doesn't have to conflict with anyone else's true happiness. Because true happiness comes from developing the mind. This is why goodwill can be a universal attitude, something you extend to everyone. And you stop to think for a while, what does it mean to be happy? How does happiness happen? It comes from your actions. So when you're wishing for someone to be happy, you're not saying, may you be happy doing whatever you're doing. If people are acting in an unskillful way, your hope is that they will see the error of their ways and start behaving in a skillful way so that they can create the causes for true happiness within. And this is a thought you can have for anyone without any sense of hypocrisy. So no conflict, no hypocrisy. Start with thoughts of goodwill for yourself. Tell yourself, may I be truly happy. And then extend the same thought to others. Start with people who are close to your heart, your family, your very close friends. May they find true happiness too. And then spread that thought out in ever-widening circles, the people you know well and like. The people you like even though you don't know them so well. To people you're more neutral about. And to people you don't like. Remember that the world would be a much better place if everyone could find true happiness within. Spread thoughts of goodwill to people you don't even know. And not just people, living beings of all kinds. East, west, north, south, above and below, out to infinity. May we all find true happiness in our hearts. Now bring your attention to your breath. Take a couple of good long, deep in and out breaths. And notice where you feel the breathing process in the body. Because when we talk about the breath, we're not talking so much about the air coming in and out through the nose. We're talking more about the flow of energy in the body itself that allows the air to come in, allows it to go out. And you might feel that in any part of the body, but try to notice where it's clearest. Focus your attention there. And then ask yourself if it's comfortable. If long breathing feels good, keep it up. If it doesn't feel good, you can change. Try shorter breathing, more shallow, or in short, out long, in long, out short. Fast, slow, heavy, light. Experiment for a while to see what rhythm and texture of breathing feels best for the body right now. If you're feeling tired, breathe in a way that's more energizing. If you're feeling tense, breathe in a way that feels relaxing. If your thoughts wander away from the breath, just drop them. You'll find yourself right back at the breath. No matter how many times they wander away, just drop them again and again. Come back to the breath. Each time you come back to the breath, reward yourself with a breath that feels especially gratifying. That way the mind will be more inclined to want to come back. Now, as the breath gets comfortable, there is a tendency to focus on the comfort instead of the breath, in which case you begin to lose the foundation for your concentration. So the next step is to be aware of the whole body as you breathe in, the whole body as you breathe out. And a good way to build up to that whole body awareness is first to go through the body section by section. So start down around the navel, around the abdomen, and watch that part of the body for a while as you breathe in, breathe out, to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. If you feel any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax, so that no new tension builds up as you breathe in, and you don't hold on to any tension as you breathe out. Now move your attention up to the solar plexus, the area right in front of the stomach, and follow the same steps there. Locate that part of the body in your awareness. Watch it for a while as you breathe in and breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. And if there's any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. And then move your attention to the middle of the chest and follow the same steps there. Now bring your attention to the base of the throat and follow the steps there. Then bring your attention to the middle of the head. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering not only through the nose, but also through the eyes, the ears. In from the back of the head, down from the top of the head, going deep into the brain. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the head in all directions, dissolving away any patterns of tension you may feel in the jaws, in the forehead, around the eyes, in the back of the neck. Letting the breath flow smoothly. If you were meditating on your own, you could continue the survey through the rest of the body, down the shoulders, out the arms, down the back, out the legs. You could survey the body as many times as you like. But for right now, choose any one spot in the body that seems most congenial, easiest to focus on, where the breath is clearest and most comfortable. Allow your attention to settle there, and then from that spot to spread out to fill the whole body. So you're aware of the whole body breathing in, the whole body breathing out. Now, the range of your awareness may have a tendency to shrink, especially on the out-breath. So each time you breathe in, remind yourself, whole body. As you breathe out, remember to keep your awareness filling the whole body. Allow the breath to find whatever rhythm feels best. Your duty is to try to maintain this sense of centered but broad awareness. Because it's still and all around, it provides a good foundation for insights to arise, insights into the workings of the mind and the body. But for the time being, don't worry about the insights, just make sure this foundation is strong. Now I invite you to meditate while I give the talk. We hear so often that meditation is about being in the present moment. Sometimes we're even told that the whole path is to be in the present moment for the sake of learning to stay in the present moment. Sometimes the present moment becomes the goal. So it's interesting to look at how the Buddha talks about the present moment. And we find that he very rarely talks about being in the present moment. But when he does, it's not simply to be there, it's because there's work to be done there. And the work has to do with the fact that we're going to suffer from aging, illness, and death, or these things will happen. But if we learn how to train the mind, we don't have to suffer from them. And we focus on the present moment because that's where the mind is trained. And the work we have to do in training the mind is related to the insights the Buddha gained on the night of his awakening. The first watch of the night, he realized that he had been reborn many, many, many times. And going from one birth to the next, it wasn't staying in the same level, and it wasn't a constant progression ever upward. It would go up and down, up and down, up and down. So the question was, why did it go up and down? In the second watch of the night, he saw that this was happening not only to him, but also to all beings. all over the cosmos. But seeing the larger picture also enabled him to see the pattern behind it. It was caused by their actions. When people acted in skillful ways based on skillful intentions, working with right view, they would tend to go up. If they acted on unskillful intentions based on wrong view, they would tend to go down. But he also saw the process was very complex. The basic principle behind it was simple. You act on good intentions, the result is going to be happiness. You act on unskillful intentions, the result is going to be pain, suffering. But because we do so many intentional acts just in the course of one day, to say nothing of the course of a lifetime, there's a complexity in how the principle works out. Sometimes you can do good in this lifetime, but it turns out that you did some bad things in a previous lifetime, or after doing good, you stop doing good and you start doing unskillful things. Or at death, you develop a wrong view. Then even though you do have some goodness to you, the wrong view will pull you down. Conversely, you may do something really bad in this lifetime, but you've done good things in a previous lifetime, or you've seen the error of your ways and you abandon that unskillful behavior later, or you develop a right view at death. That will pull you up. The good and bad things you've done will give their results. But if you have counteracting tendencies like this, the results will be delayed. This lesson taught the Buddha several things. One is the power of your decisions in the present moment, like that moment of death. It's not necessarily determined by what you've done before. And this principle extends to all our actions in the present moment. Sometimes we think when we hear about the principle of karma, that whatever you experience right now is the result of your past actions. There's nothing much you can do about it. But that, the Buddha said, is an extreme wrong view. What you do right now is a combination of things coming in from the past, also the actions you do in the present moment. As I was saying the other night, it's like being a good cook or a bad cook. You can have really good ingredients in the refrigerator, really good ingredients on your counter. But if you're a bad cook, you can make horrible food out of it. Conversely, if you have bad ingredients, but if you're a really clever cook, you can take something bad and make some good food out of it. So in the same way, what you have coming in from the past is like the raw material from which you shape the present moment. But if you learn proper skills in how to shape the present moment, then you can experience even bad karma coming in from the past, but you don't have to suffer from it. We have this ability to choose our actions in the present moment. We have some freedom of choice in the present moment. This is why a path to the end of suffering is possible. And it's also pointed to how important the actions of the mind are. It's your intention that's going to determine the quality of the result of the action. Sometimes we're told that the Buddha picked up his teachings on karma and rebirth from the culture around him. But when we look at what other people were teaching at the same time, that's not the case. There were people who taught that there is no such thing as rebirth, that at the end of the life, that's it, you're gone. Other people taught that there was rebirth, but your actions had no bearing on where you're going to go, or that you had no choice at all. So when we think about how the Buddha taught karma and rebirth, we realize he's giving us a lot of power and a lot of freedom. We have the freedom to choose in the present moment, that we can, if we see that our actions in the past have been bad, we can change our ways. And that change in our ways will have a definite good impact on our present moment and on the future. So there's power that comes with this teaching. There's also, however, the possibility that you could be doing good and then suddenly change your mind and back in the bad direction. Which means that you have to be heedful. You can't just coast on the fact that you've done a lot of good in the past and hope that that will take care of everything. You have to be very careful every moment that you make a choice. But you'll be confident that the effort you put into making the right choices is well spent, and that really can make a difference. So when aging comes, when illness comes, when death comes, you don't simply accept the fact that these things have come. You realize that you can make a difference in how you respond to them, how you shape your experience around them. And this is why the Buddha said, focus in on the present moment to learn how to develop the right skills that you're going to need. So as you focus on the present moment, one, to remind yourself that you can't waste your time. You don't know when death is going to come. You don't know when illness is going to come. Aging is kind of predictable. If you live long enough, you're going to get old. But as for illness and death, we don't know when they're going to come. So you have to work right now while you have the opportunity. So that's one thing the Buddha has you keep in mind. The other is how he saw the process of death as it happens. He says it's like going from one house to the next. In particular, he said it's like a fire going from one house, setting fire to a house nearby. The fire is what you cling to. And in those days they believed that fire, in order to burn, had to cling to something. So it clings to the wind. In this case, he says the wind is like craving. Where your cravings are going to take you. It may sound good. You get to go where you want to go. Except that there are times when other cravings come in that you didn't expect. And you know how unpredictable craving can be. It can be totally out of your control. So ideally, he said, you want to be able to learn how to put out the fire. But if you can't put out the fire, at the very least, learn to have some good houses nearby. And learn how to direct the wind so it can go to a good place. And these are things that you can do. Even when aging, illness, and death come, you don't have to be overcome by them. If you develop strength of mind, you can make a difference. This is why this series of talks is called Undaunted. You don't want to be daunted by the fact that you're getting old, that you're getting sick, that you're dying. There's still good things you can do that really can make a difference. And it's worth the effort that goes into learning what those good things are and putting out the effort to actually develop them in your mind. Tonight we'll talk about issues of aging and illness as kind of a dress rehearsal for death, and particularly issues of weakness that come with aging and pain that comes with illness. And at the same time, we'll also talk about how you can live your life in such a way that you are preparing a good house nearby. And then tomorrow night we'll talk more directly about death, what happens at death, and how you can get some control over that wind. So either you can learn how to put out the fire, or if you can't do that, you can direct the fire in a direction where you really do want to go. So, aging. The big problem in aging, actually there are several problems. One of the big problems, of course, is that you don't look as good as you did before. You know you're getting old when people say, hey, you haven't changed. You're looking really good. Yeah. They're giving you encouragement. Okay, the Buddha says that the beauty of the body is not important. What you want is the beauty of the mind. And that comes down to two things. One is virtue, that you hold by the precepts, no killing, no stealing, no illicit sex, no lying, no taking of intoxicants. And you develop some patience and endurance. Because you will have to put up with a lot of weakness and a lot of pain. As for the weakness in the body, the Buddha says you can learn how to counteract that by developing strengths of mind. And it's interesting that when the Buddha talks about the qualities of mind that you need to develop in order to guarantee a good chance of a good rebirth, there are the 7 treasures, the 5 strengths, the 7 qualities of what he calls a fortress that you can develop for yourself. There are 2 qualities that appear in every list. One is conviction and the other is discernment. Conviction over here, of course, means you're convinced that the Buddha really was awakened, that he wasn't just some random prince who had a few random ideas that aren't relevant anymore, that he actually found out what's really going on, what really happens to the mind, and what really happens at death, and how we do really have this possibility of shaping how we handle our death and how we handle our rebirth. As I said earlier, he didn't simply just accept the ideas about karma and rebirth that were around there, because there were many different ideas about karma and rebirth in his time. But he did teach karma in such a way that it can be empowering. This is what's relevant. When we talk about conviction, we think about not only do we believe that the Buddha was awakened, but also it has an important consequences for us as we choose what to do with our lives. Now, the Buddha didn't say that he could prove rebirth to anybody or prove the power of karma, but he did say he couldn't give empirical proofs, but there are what they call pragmatic proofs that he would offer. One is that if you believe in the power of your actions and believe in the fact of rebirth, you will tend to behave in a much better way. You will tend to be more skillful. And there's nothing lost by skillful behavior. In America, they have these clubs that get together every now and then. They say, suppose that you had only 1 year to live the rest of your life. What would you change? What would you do? And I was talking with someone who belonged to one of these clubs one time, and he said, what would be really interesting is if you had a club that said, what if you really believed in rebirth? What would that do? How would it change your actions? And a year later, he came back to see me, and he said, when you said that to me, I really resisted that. So I looked into why do I resist the idea of rebirth and the power of karma? He said, I realized because it would have to make me a better person. I'd have to put forth more effort. Well, that's the whole point of the teachings, is that yes, you do put forth more effort, but it's worth it. So the question is, how do you do that? If you hold to the principle of conviction like this, believing what the Buddha had to say, you realize that the best way to live your life, and given the fact that you have to keep on creating karma all the way up to the moment, creating good karma all the way up to the moment you die, you have to be very careful about what you focus on as what you want out of your life. In America, they have what they call bucket lists. It comes from the phrase kicking the bucket, which is an idiom. Do you have that idiom in Singapore? Yep. I checked it out online one time to see, where does it come from, kicking the bucket? What does that mean, dying? And you go on to Uncle Google, and Uncle Google will tell you about 5 or 6 different ways that it's developed. Nobody knows. At any rate, they have bucket lists. They say what things that you would like to do with the rest of your life, and most of them have to do with places you would like to go, things you would like to see, foods you would like to eat that you haven't done this. The Buddha has a very different idea of a good bucket list. His good bucket list is learn how to be virtuous, learn how to be generous, learn how to develop your discernment. Those are things that you should aim at doing as you finish your life, because those are the things that will create a good house for your fire to go if you have to go to one. There was a story from the time of when Ajahn Mahabhu was alive. Back in the 1970s, there was a woman who was dying of cancer. And she wanted to come to his monastery for a couple months to meditate, to get herself ready for her death. And Ajahn Mahabua told her that, okay, I can look after the state of your mind, but I can't look after the state of your body. You will have to bring along either a nurse or a doctor to look after you. And so she asked her friends, and she had an old friend who, in her 80s who had been a doctor, retired. And so the old woman volunteered to go along with her. So the two women went to Ajahn Mahabua's monastery. They stayed there for a total of 3 months. He gave them a Dharma talk for almost every night. And fortunately, they recorded the talks. So it gives 90 recordings, basically. And then they went back to Bangkok. The woman who had cancer died after 6 months. And the 80-year-old doctor suddenly found herself with a pile of 90 cassette tapes. That was back in the days of cassette tapes. And she came up with the idea that she wanted to transcribe the tapes. Now, she was old, her eyesight was failing, she was getting weak. And so she talked about this to Ajahn Mahabua. He said, give it a try. And the phrase he used, I really like, is to see how much goodness you can squeeze out of your body before you have to throw it away. If you take home any message from tonight's talk, make that be the message. See how much goodness you can squeeze out of your body before you can throw it away. And so she managed to do it. She transcribed all 90 talks. They printed them in 2 big volumes. Each volume was this thick. Some of the talks I translated in the books straight from the heart. And he was the talks mainly deal with how you deal with pain, how you deal with approaching illness and death, approaching death. So that should be your bucket list. What kind of goodness do you want to develop out of your life? The Buddha basically talks about virtue, generosity, and goodwill. Generosity, of course, means not only giving material things, but also giving of your time, giving of your patience, giving your knowledge, giving your forgiveness. All of these things can be done. Even when you're poor, you can still learn how to give forgiveness. Although this seems to be the hardest one of all. And yet it should be the easiest. It doesn't cost anything. You could sit here and just give forgiveness to everybody in the world right now. And you have to ask yourself, if you have trouble forgiving somebody of their past ills, what's the problem? Now, forgiving here doesn't mean that you have to go loving the person or continuing to be around the person. You may decide that, okay, this is a person I don't want to have anything to do with anymore, but I'm not going to try to get any revenge. I'm not going to get after them. Because that's what forgiveness means in the Buddhist context. Is I'm not going to try to even the score or to get back at the other person. When the Buddha talks about generosity, it's not only what you give, but also your motivation for giving it. If you give things with the idea, okay, I will get this back in a future lifetime, that's an okay motivation. It's not the highest, though. There's more merit that comes from giving simply because you feel it's a good thing to give, or because you feel that my mind becomes serene, I feel good just giving, without having to think about the consequences further down the line. As for what you give, the Buddha said, it's really up to you. Wherever you feel inspired, wherever you feel that it would be well used, learn how to give. You're free to give there. There was a king one time who came to ask the Buddha, where should a gift be given? And he had had experience with the Brahmins and the Jains. The Brahmins said, give to the Brahmins. The Jains said, give to the Jains. So this king expected the Buddha to say, well, give to the Buddhists. That's not what he said. He said, give where you feel inspired. Because the act of giving is an act of freedom. Probably your first experience of freedom of choice as a child was when you gave something not because you had to give it, but because you wanted to give it. It's good to stop and think back. What was the first time you gave something to somebody, not because you had to, it wasn't their birthday, it wasn't a holiday, or it wasn't Chinese New Year's. In America, we'd say it wasn't Christmas. But you gave it because you wanted to. Think about that, and think about the good feeling that you had with that, because that kind of good feeling is what the Buddha wants you to focus on. So think in ways in which you can be generous. Generosity is also one of the aspects of the Buddhist path where you can use your imagination most freely. Give whatever you want to whoever you want. What would you like to give to whom? What would that person really benefit from? This becomes a good exercise in goodwill, basically. When you think about what would make that person happy, put some extra effort into it. That extra effort increases the value of the generosity. So that's one of the ways in which you build a good house. The second way, of course, is by being virtuous. This means following the precepts. And sometimes you hear people say, well, you learn discernment in the precepts as to when to follow them and when not to follow them. That's not discernment, that's just ordinary everyday behavior. Real discernment comes when you say, okay, I'm going to stick with the precepts no matter what, but then you run up against difficulties. One of the most difficult things, of course, is you have some information that somebody else wants. And you know that if you give that information to them, they will probably misuse it, use it in a hurtful way. So the question is, how can you not give that information, but at the same time not lie? Because of all the precepts, the Buddha said, the most important precept is the one against lying. You want to make it a vow to yourself that, no, whatever I say, I'm going to say the truth. Though it may not be the whole truth, you don't have to give all the details. Someone asks you, how are you? They don't want to hear the entire medical record, right? You say, basically okay. I'm breathing. Okay. But the important thing is how you maintain your initial intention to stick with the precepts, even in difficult situations. And then finally, of course, there's goodwill. As I said earlier, goodwill is a wish for happiness. And it's basically a wish that all beings would behave in a skillful way, because that's how they're going to be happy. Now, there are going to be a lot of beings who are not going to behave in a skillful way, which is why goodwill has to be paired with equanimity. But you start with the goodwill. You see, if this person may have been horrible in the past, may have done all kinds of horrible things to me, my family, my friends, or people that I feel sorry for. But if this person can have a change of heart, I'm willing to be happy for that person. We think of the story of Angulimala. You may have known him. He was the criminal who had killed all those many, many people. And then the Buddha taught him, basically subdued his pride. And he had a change of heart. So he decided to stop killing everybody and became a monk. And actually he became an arahant. Now there were a lot of people who were not happy, because here he was literally getting away with murder, because he was not being punished. And they would throw things at him when he was on his alms round. Now that's the problem. They may have felt justified in throwing things at him, but he was now an arahant. You don't throw things at an arahant. It's not good karma. So you have to learn how to figure, okay, this person may have been horrible in the past, but if this person has a change of heart, I want to be happy for that person. Put yourself in that person's place. If you have been behaving in a bad way, but then you change your ways, wouldn't you want other people to be happy for you? So think about this as you develop your goodwill. So these are some of the ways in which you prepare a good house. In case your fire leaves this house and goes someplace else, you haven't been able to put the fire out. At least you have the opportunity to know that there will be good houses to go to. Now that thought that your actions will now make a difference will help give you strength, even when physical strength begins to fade. Because as your physical strength begins to fade, sometimes you find it harder to focus in your meditation, but at least you can always develop thoughts of goodwill. That's something that anybody can do at any time. And especially when you're sick, it's one of the things that will pull you out of your sickness. Because when sickness comes, when illness comes, one of the first thoughts is, why me? I saw a cartoon one time in which it was a hospital full of people, and everyone was, why me, why me, why me, why me, why me? And you begin to realize, okay, it's everybody. It's just, why me now? Now that's a different question. But why is it happening to me now? Well, there's karma. But you can also realize, when you start to think about it, okay, everybody is subject to these things. And that thought can help take the burden off of you, so you're not feeling so that you are the one who's being singled out for any special punishment. This is something that hits everybody all the time. The same when someone in your family has died, okay? This has hit everybody at some time or another. So when you're falling ill, it's good to spend every day. The Buddha himself would do this when he was wounded by a rock that Devadatta threw down from the mountain. A sliver, pierced through his foot, and it was very painful. And the Buddha was taunted by Mara. So, what are you, just lying around moping? And the Buddha says, I'm not moping, I'm spreading goodwill to everybody. So that's the first thing you have to think of when you're falling ill. Falling ill is, okay, goodwill for everyone. And then the second thing, of course, you have to think about is how you're going to deal with the pain that comes with that illness. Now, I talked about this a little bit the other night, but I'd like to repeat some of the teachings because they really are an important skill and an important lesson in how you can see that, okay, there may be the karma coming in, that the body is creating pain, but my mind does not have to suffer from this. And you realize the suffering from the mind does not automatically come with the pain in the body. It's something that you're adding on top. Now, if you look in the Buddha's analysis of what happens in dependent co-arising, the different processes that give rise to suffering, the factors that lie close to feeling are things like how you pay attention, what your intentions are, how you talk to yourself around the pain, and what your perceptions of the pain are. So the most skillful intention around the pain is not necessarily to make it go away, although you can find there are techniques that will actually sometimes make the pain go away. But you say, I don't want it to invade my mind and remain in my mind. That's what you're aiming for. And that should be your underlying intention as you deal with the pain. Ajaan Fuang, my teacher, tells a story. One time he was suffering from a long series of migraines. And he tried Chinese medicine, Thai medicine, Western medicine, nothing worked. And then the headaches were very continuous. And it got so bad that he had to have somebody staying with him in his room in case he woke up in the middle of the night to help him do what could be done to help alleviate the pain. Well, one night he woke up in the middle of the night, and all the monks who were there who were supposed to be looking after him were all asleep. And so his first thought was, well, who's looking after whom here? And he said, well, as long as I'm awake, I might as well sit and meditate. And then he realized he had been trying to make the pain go away. And that's not what the Buddha teaches in the Four Noble Truths, that you want to comprehend the pain. That means understanding it such a way that it doesn't invade the mind and remain. And so he focused on comprehending the pain, and he was able to gain some very important insights as a result. This is an important thing to think about, because many of the Kruubaa Ajaans in Thailand will say that many of the important insights they got in their meditation came when they were sick, as they had to deal with the pain. So what do you learn about pain? Well, the first thing you're going to learn about pain is that the Buddha gives 4 steps in how to deal with feelings in general, and then they apply in meditation, they also apply outside of meditation. The first 2 steps have to do with actually creating a sense of well-being in the body. Now, there may be pain in one part of the body, but it doesn't have to consume the whole body. You can focus on other parts of the body that you can make comfortable. Ajaan Lee talks a lot about this. The meditation I gave you just now, focusing on different parts of the body, breathing in such a way that that part of the body feels comfortable. When you do that, there may be a pain, say, in your knee. The first thing, you don't go focusing on the knee. You're going to need some reinforcements. You're going to need a place where you feel safe in your body. So you create that sense of safety by the way you breathe. And as for the time being, if the pain wants to have the knee, let it have the knee. You're not going to lay claim quite yet. You're going to focus in, okay, what can I do to make this comfortable? Step number 1. Step number 2, once there's a comfortable sensation here, can I think of it going down through the nerves of the body, down through the pain and out the other side? Because oftentimes, a lot of the physical pain has to do with the tension you've developed around it. Because as children, remember, when was our first experience of pain? It was when we came out of birth, at birth. And there was nobody to explain pain to us at the time, right? Even if they tried to explain it, we wouldn't understand. So we developed our own ways of dealing with pain at that point, and many of which we never unlearned as we got older. So you can think about some of the ignorant ways that a little child might feel about pain or approach pain. We're carrying those around with us. So you want to investigate those. And one of them is, our feeling is that if we can tense up around the pain, we can stop it from spreading. And so one of the first things you have to learn how to do is, okay, allow yourself to relax around the pain, so that when the breath energy goes through and there, you can relax and not be afraid that the pain will spread throughout the whole body. And you'll find that, okay, if you relax around the pain, sometimes the pain actually goes away. Other times it doesn't go away, but at least you have developed what you realize now is a more proactive attitude toward the pain. You're not trying to run away from it. You're not trying to prevent it. You can be more proactive into going into it. And this is where the next two steps come in. What the Buddha calls being sensitive to what he calls mental fabrication, and then learning to calm mental fabrication. Mental fabrication is basically are your feelings and your perceptions. Perceptions here are the images that you have in mind, the labels that you place on things. So first you want to get sensitive. Well, what are the perceptions I have around this pain? And one of the best ways to see what those perceptions are to challenge them. Because again, many of them are subconscious. So we have to ask questions. What is my attitude toward the pain? Now one of your attitudes may be, well, now that the pain is in my knee, the pain and the knee are the same thing. My knee is pained, okay, or my knee is in pain. And you say, well, wait a minute, the knee is what? Earth, water, wind, fire, the four elements. Pain is something else. It's not the same thing. Can you see it as being something different? And if you can see it as something separate, okay, you can be in your knee, and the pain can be, it's almost a feeling that the pain is hovering around, but you haven't glued it onto the knee. You've learned how to unglue it. Other ways of ungluing it are to ask yourself, where is the sharpest point of the pain right now? And if you look at it, you begin to realize it moves. You focus right here, it's gone there. Okay, focus there, it's gone here. Chase it around. And sometimes it'll seem like it'll separate out. So you have awareness, the body, and the pain as three separate things. This will be an important insight. It means you can be with your body, you can be with your awareness. The pain can be there, but you're not laying claim to it. This is an important thing. And you actually see it as something separate. Other questions that can get the same result would be, is the pain a solid block? Does the pain have an intention? You can think of a child. When a pain comes into the body, the child may feel, okay, this pain is actually out to get me. And we carry that around. You have to realize, okay, the pain has no intention at all. It's just there. It doesn't even know that it's there. It has no intention at all. So why am I thinking of it as having an evil intention toward me? Or if it seems to be a solid block, can I begin to see it as being separate moments of pain? And you begin to see it's very quick. They come and go, come and go, come and go. And again, the sharpest point will move around. But if you keep pursuing this, and especially if you see that when the moments of pain come, they're going away already. I talked about this the other night. It's like sitting in the back of one of those old station wagons, where they have the seat facing back. And as they're driving down the road, as soon as you see something, it's already going away from you. So have that perception in mind about the pain. This way you can be with the pain, because the simple fact that you're taking a proactive attitude toward the pain gives you some confidence that you don't have to fear the pain. And that perception of fear can be put aside. And it's almost like, as long as you're afraid of the pain is going to come and get you. But if you're not afraid of it anymore, it starts running away. But what actually is happening is that you have, in Singapore, do they have the word glom? Like when you glom something onto something else? It's basically to glue something on. It's like you've glued the pain onto your knee, or you've glued the pain onto your heart, or you've glued the pain onto your shoulder. Okay, if you can figure out some way of ungluing it, you can be there with the pain, but it doesn't have to oppress the mind. You're not afraid of it anymore. This is one of the reasons why we call this book, or this series of talks, Undaunted. You don't have to be afraid of pain. Because so many of us our lives are run by our fear of pain. There are good things that we could do, but we're afraid of the pain. There are times when we can be more courageous, but we're afraid of the pain. There are times when we could be able to do without certain comforts, but we're afraid of the pain. But if you learn how not to be afraid of the pain, then you're more free. And this is what the purpose of the Buddhist teachings are, is to learn us how to be, we can live with pain, we can live in this world where there is aging, there is illness, there is death, but we don't have to be afraid of them. We can face them with more courage, with more confidence. Because the Buddha is teaching us skills in how to deal with these things so we don't have to suffer from them. He's also saying that no matter how old you are, no matter how sick you are, no matter how close you are to death, every moment that you devote to this, developing these skills, is well spent. Because some people, they believe life ends at death, so why bother? Just shoot me full of painkiller and I'll be okay. But they're being irresponsible, because when the mind is full of painkillers like that, or the brain is full of painkillers like that, you lose your clarity. And when you've lost your clarity, you don't know what kind of choices you're going to make. That's at the moment that death comes. But if you're able to be with the pain and not suffer from it, that means, okay, you need less painkiller, and then you're a lot clearer, and you can begin to make decisions that are more and more wise. Years back, I was flying on a plane from Bangkok back to Los Angeles, and the child sitting in the row in front of me had all the Ice Age pictures. Do you know those movies that they had back, 10, 15, 20 years ago? And so I got to see all the Ice Age pictures. But there was one incident that I thought was a really good Dharma lesson. The characters are floating around in this fog bank at night, and they're lost. And all of a sudden they start seeing these sort of lighted areas, so they row over to the lighted areas. And there are these mermaids and mermen. They're really good looking. And the characters are just kind of goggle-eyed. And as you look at the mermaids and mermen, you begin to realize, though, there's a little bit of burst of static every now and then. And as you look deeper into the static, you see fangs. So when the moment comes when you're dying and you start seeing possibilities of where you could go, you want to have all of your mindfulness with you. Otherwise, you go for the mermaids, you go for the mermen, and then you get chewed up by the fangs. Because just because something is good looking, it looks like a good possibility, doesn't mean that it's going to be that way. So you want to have as much mindfulness as you can. Ajaan Fuang had a student, an old woman who started meditating when she was in her 70s. And she started meditating because she had a lot of illnesses. And she learned how to sit with pain, and the fact that pain didn't really much mean anything to her. Finally, some of his other students who were working for a hospital, they took her to the hospital, and the doctors did some exploratory surgery, and they discovered that she had a really bad case of cancer of the liver. And it was too far gone to treat. And so they sort her back up, and they said, well, we can give you a painkiller. And she said, I don't want any. And she said, I'll just be there and learn how to deal with the pain. And they would come in every morning and she would give them a Dharma talk. Up until the day she died. So it is possible to learn how to be with pain and yet not suffer from it. And this is one of the most important skills you can learn as you're beginning to face aging, as you're beginning to face illness, as you're beginning to face death. Aging and illness, as I said, are kind of dress rehearsals for death. You know, if you find yourself getting weak and lazy and say, oh, I'm too tired to meditate, I'm too tired even to think thoughts of goodwill. Okay, it's going to get worse when you die. It's not going to get easier. So you say, I might as well learn how to do it now. And if you have that attitude, if you have a fighting attitude, that's what Dharma practice is all about. I mean, think about the Buddha himself. When he was a young prince, he saw that all of his wealth and power and status and everything, that was going to leave him. And he wanted to find a happiness that didn't die. The people around him said, "Oh, come on, that doesn't exist. It's beyond the human capabilities." And he said, "No, I don't want to live my life with the possibility that it might exist and I didn't make an effort." And so he went out and he made the effort, and he actually found that it worked. That's the good news of the Buddha's awakening. Is that even though there is aging, illness, and death, one, when they happen, you don't have to suffer from them. And two, if you practice all the way, you get to a point where aging, illness, and death will not happen ever again. That's when you're really safe. That's the ultimate happiness. But it does require, like the Buddha had, a fighting spirit. You have to be undaunted in the face, okay? There's going to be weakness, there's going to be pain, but you can develop the strengths of the mind, you can develop this conviction and the discernment that will allow you to go beyond them. So you don't just accept things as they come. You begin to realize, okay, I accept the fact that they're there, but I'm not going to accept the fact that I have to suffer from them. I want to see what I can do. So that's the attitude that you should develop, an undaunted attitude towards aging, illness, and death. So that's part one. Do we have any questions about part one? We'll have part two tomorrow night.
Thank you for sharing. I have one question. Hi.
Okay.
So my question is that does it work the same with mental pain? Because typically when it comes to like physical pain, it comes also with the mental pain. And do all the advice or sharings that you gave applicable when it comes to dealing with mental pain?
Yeah, well, the basic principle in dealing with both kinds of pain is you want to be able to separate yourself out from them. Now, for mental pain, the sense of separation is going to be different. And here's where it's useful to have the image that your mind is like a committee, that there are many members in the committee and inside your mind. And when there's mental pain, okay, one member is in pain, but it doesn't have to be the whole mind. You can ask yourself, okay, there are parts of my mind that can step back from that mental pain and see it from a different perspective. And this different perspective is going to come from learning how to talk to yourself, learning to hold different perceptions. I mean, it's the same issue with the pain. Learn to talk to yourself in a different way, holding different perceptions. And that way I can step back from this. Okay, the pain can be there for a while, but I can step back from it and say, okay, this is going to last for only a certain while, but it's going to go away. And it's going to say, but. You say, okay, no, you can counter all of its arguments. But it's good to have this image of the mind as being a committee. And remember, okay, you've got skillful members in there, and allow them to have a voice. Years back, I had a student who had a problem, in fact, he still has a problem, with marijuana. And one night he called me up. He said, Ajahn, I've got a bag of marijuana in my hand right now. What can you say to make me not smoke it? And I said, what happened to your committee members who don't want you to smoke it? He said, I killed them. And I said, well, you didn't kill them all, because one of them called me up just now. So find the committee members that are not in pain and can speak with a voice of wisdom. I mean, you've learned a lot about mental pain in the past. Okay, it lasts for a while and it's going to go. And sometimes after it's gone away, you begin to realize that was really stupid to begin with. Why did I allow myself to fall for that? Okay, try to bring that voice of reason back into operation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question from... okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have a question?
Okay. You're letting me off easy tonight.
Hi, John. To add to that question just then, sometimes that committee member can be really loud and overwhelming. Like my experience with illness, it challenges all of your identifications with yourself, and that can be super overwhelming, and there's no semblance of like mindfulness or equanimity. So
Okay, this is where it's good to, I mean, nowadays we have YouTube with Dharma talks. Just listen to somebody, and that voice will say, that Ajahn, he doesn't know, I've suffered like he's never suffered. Everybody's suffered. There is a certain pride that goes with our defilements. Like, I'm suffering like nobody has ever suffered ever. So you have to say, that's stupid. That's not true. So, number one. Okay. And then secondly, just because they're loud doesn't mean you have to believe them. Thirdly, remind yourself, okay, aging, illness, and death come to human beings. I'm a human being. No matter how strong I've trained myself to be, no matter how, how well I take care of my body, these things, it's still going to happen. And so you have to remind yourself, okay, I've got to take my pride down a little bit. And there's a chant we have. This is aging. I'm subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to death. I haven't gone beyond these things. The Thai translation of that passage is, aging is normal, illness is normal, death is normal. There's nothing out of the ordinary of this. So if your self-image doesn't allow you to get sick or doesn't allow you to suffer, okay, you say something is wrong with my self-image. And you want to develop the self-image that says, okay, I'm the sort of person who, even though I do get sick, I know how to handle it. Or I don't know how to handle it yet, I can learn how to handle it. That kind of self-image is a useful one to cultivate. Okay.
another question, Ajahn, can also have a lot of comparison, like what you said about the why me. And I've been trying to reflect in a way that allows me to let go of that. So then I see sort of like maybe what a lot of people might be experiencing is a lot of good karma. And I'm not experiencing that right now. I'm experiencing the aging, illness, and death. But I don't know if that's just to make myself feel better.
Well, these things come about because of your karma. You chose to be born. Since you made that choice, then you're going to have to put up with the fact that there's going to be aging, there's going to be illness, there's going to be death. You can't blame anybody else. My teacher had a student one time she was a nurse, very good looking, and she was constantly the source of, gossip about her, and she's getting sick and tired of hearing all, she would hear it sort of off in the distance. And so she went to meditate with my teacher one time, and she was sitting there, and she had this vision of herself as being in a hall of mirrors. Images of herself going in this direction, images of herself going in that direction. And she said, oh my gosh, I must have been a victim of gossip like this for who knows how many lifetimes. That got her even more depressed. So she went to see my teacher, hoping to get some comfort. And he said, well, you were the one who wanted to be born. Nobody asked you to be born. So sometimes you have to give yourself a good splash of cold water.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Evening, Ajahn. Understood from your talk just now that you've alluded at the possibility of having a committee member observing. And I noticed that there's always this part of the mind that is always observing. And when one was sick, in sleeping state, sometimes this observer wakes up in the middle of a dream, during the process of dreaming, and you're aware that you're dreaming. And you can see the processes of the dream, and can see the motivations behind the dream, the fabrications in the dream. And in the previous talk, you said, turn every opportunity into opportunity, a chance of practice. So when that arises during a dream, being aware of dreaming, seeing the connections of those, and you can even stop or change the dream. And you can also stop all the fabrications. So at that point, how can one continue the training of the committee member?
Okay, you can do two things. One is, basically say, I can stop this right now. I don't have to be involved in this. And what I usually find, though, is when I've learned how to stop the dream, I wake up. Some people, though, will continue asleep. It's okay, I just want to watch to see what will be the next thing that will spark another dream. What will be the seed of that? Because dreams are a primary example of what the Buddha would call becoming. And he says, it's your craving for becoming that creates suffering. We'll talk about this more tomorrow night. But becoming is basically taking on an identity in a world of experience. So you start with a desire, there's something you want, or something that grabs your attention, and then there's the you there's the world in which that thing exists, and then there's the you who could go into that world and play a role in trying to get that. All of that together is becoming. Now what you want to see, okay, what is the seed of that? What is the object of desire that would pull you into that particular world? And then can you learn how to develop some dispassion for it? You realize the implications of being in this world are X, 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 X. It's going to be suffering. Why bother? I was mentioning to someone else this afternoon when I was in college, university, the university I went to had what they call co-ed dorms, where you had men and women living in the same sections. And there was a guy living in my dorm whose girlfriend was the runner-up to Miss America. Very good looking. And what was very unattractive about her was that she knew she was good looking. She'd walk into a room and kind of look around. See? And you realize, okay, if I could find a woman who was that attractive, that's what she'd be like. She'd be unbearable. So you can see, okay, physical beauty is not everything. And it also was really great because she and her boyfriend would yell at each other, high voices. And hearing the yells coming down the hall, I said, yes. One more good reason not to fall for her. So when you can see the drawbacks of the things that would pull you in, again, and then you begin to see, okay, this process happens not only while I'm dreaming, it happens as I go through the day all the time. And you begin to understand, this is the process that leads to rebirth, this is the process that leads to more suffering. So see if you can get that insight.
Yeah. Sometimes when you see that there is no point in creating all these fabrications and you just drop it and there was only just light left. And at that point, what can one do?
Then at that point you say, can I simply stay with this state of just aware, aware, aware? Because that's one of the other problems of the mind, is it's, okay, I can be aware for a while, but it gets boring, let's find something else. There's a passage in the Canon where the universe has been destroyed. Most of the beings are these Brahmas who feed on rapture. Now you think, feeding on rapture, that sounds pretty cool. But then a new world begins to develop. It starts out with an ocean, and there's this film on the ocean, which is a kind of food. It tastes like honey. And some of the Brahmas see this and say, I haven't seen that for a long time. Let's see what that is. In other words, they get bored feeding on rapture. And then they go down and they taste it, and they taste it, and they get greedy again, and then they fall. So see how long your mind can say, okay, I'll just be here with just being aware, aware, aware. And see how long you can do that without getting bored. And if you do get bored, remember, the boredom is the main problem. You have to investigate that. So there's plenty to do.
Speaking of the sutra, are there much sutras in the Buddha's canon that talks about practicing during a dream?
No.
Thank you.
But you can take lessons from what he has to say about becoming and apply them.
Thank you, Ajahn, for your talk and for coming to Singapore. I have a question which, so because I work in a hospital and I always see a lot of patients, I mean, of course, with all sorts of medical conditions. And I think one of it which I find the most scary is when they are confused, the elderly patients are confused or delirious because they have dementia. And so when I see them in that state, I get scared because I also think that maybe one day I'll be like that. So even if I practice mindfulness now, if I lose my own rationality or alertness, maybe I may not be able to know how to handle my own sickness and pain. So that's one thing when I see them. But sometimes sometimes I will think that, it's just my job to like take care of the patients. So sometimes I will become indifferent to their suffering. So I'm just like to ask for your advice how I can contemplate when I see other people suffering in a way that it doesn't affect me negatively, but at the same time I have compassion for them. Yeah,
Okay, the
thank you.
compassion would be is there something I can do that would help bring this person a little bit more to his or her senses? I mean, my father had dementia the last 2 years of his life. And I found that there were certain songs that he liked and other things like that. So you might ask the family of the patient, okay, what kind of music did this person like? Can you provide a tape for that? And then there will be cases where you realize I cannot help this person. And that's when you say, okay, if I think thoughts of compassion without any equanimity, this is going to make me suffer. So you have to realize, okay, this is this person's karma and it's beyond me. And that's one of the things that, being a nurse, it hurts. You'd like to be able to treat everybody, right? But there are going to be some limitations. So just accept that fact as part of the human life. Then the other question you're asking, of course, though, is what about me? What if if I'm delirious? And this is another area where practicing a lot of goodwill ahead of time is going to be good. Because many times they found that people who are in dementia, they may lose their reasoning faculty, but they tend to maintain their sort of emotive tone. And if they were kindly people, they tend to be kindly demented people. So lots of goodwill all the time.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Get the mic.
Thank you, Ajahn. My question is, since aging and death is inevitable, what is the Buddhist definition of the good life then? I mean, it's a question that a lot of great philosophers will ask, but...
Okay, the good life is when you find what is deathless. I mean, that's what the whole point of the Buddhist teaching is not only do you learn how to be with aging, illness, and death and not suffer, but you can actually find that there is a dimension that's accessible to the mind where there is no aging, there is no illness, there is no death. And a life devoted to finding that and gaining freedom that way, that's the good life. Because this is one of the reasons why we bow down to the Buddha is that he points out that, okay, it is possible. One of the things that bothers me about so much of the way modern Dharma is taught is that, well, you just learn how to accept things as they are, and don't place your expectations too high, and you'll be okay. And that's depression. And the Buddha aimed high, no aging, no illness, no death, and he was able to succeed. He showed human beings can do this. And so we try to take that message seriously. That's a good life.
Anyone else with further questions on aging, illness?
These aren't problems? His hand.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ryan?
yeah. So I have a question, Ajahn. So I think as a lay person practicing, I feel that I tend to avoid pain by finding pleasure in things, mostly whether it's like the daily things like food or sleeping or like sometimes entertainment. So then in a way I get to escape pain because I use these things to distract myself. So then my question is, in my practice, how do I try to strive for higher standards? Because higher standards of practice tend to come with more pain. And of course, I read a lot of your books and other books of biographies, and they tend to practice extremely hard, like they don't lie down for years.
Well,
Things
no,
like
that's not required.
So I just don't know how to increase my standards.
Okay, well, go to her hospital. And see the people in dementia and say, do I want to be like that when I get... Because, some dementia is avoidable. Some dementia, though, happens because people look forward at the end of their life. They don't see anything to look forward to. They look back in their lives, there are things that they did in the past that they feel bad about. So they can't go forward, they can't go back, and so they just say, let's just check out. Yeah. But it's miserable. There comes a point, death, when it comes, is not going to say, okay, you can go and escape me by finding food and entertainment. There's no escaping it. So you really got to think in ways that give rise to more heedfulness, realizing that these are skills I've got to master. And as I said at the very beginning, when the Buddha talks about the importance of the present moment, it's not just being okay in the present moment. It's realizing there's work that has to be done. I have this opportunity right now to do it. I don't know how much longer I'm going to have this opportunity. But I do have right now, this breath coming in, this breath going out. Or just lock yourself in a room, no TV, no internet, no nothing, no books on the shelves, just you in an empty room. See what comes up in your mind. You say, okay, these are the demons that are going to come up in my mind at that point. If I can't handle them now, it's not going to get easier as you get weaker and older. Way in the back.
Ryan, behind you.
Yes, when we run into problems, the ordinary mind makes a statement such as, I am in pain. So your teaching was mainly centered on analyzing this pain, where it is, how it arises, and so forth. But could we turn the analysis in a different direction and analyze the I that is in pain? We think in terms of like entities and characteristics, right? So the characteristics that in pain, the entity is the I. So I think that Buddhist commentators are very good at dissecting reality, analyzing things. So instead of analyzing the pain, is it possible that we turn the other direction and we try to find who is this I, this ego, this person that is in pain, where it arises, where it abides, where it ceases, what is its nature, and so forth. You know, like even in the Pali Canon, there are some sutras that talk about that has tools for analyzing the nature of this ego, such as the 20 lofty peaks of the view of the transitory collection. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember when the Buddha was teaching the five brethren, he gave two Dharma talks. First was the wheel of Dharma, and the second was on not self. He focused first on the problem of pain, then he focused on the problem of the I. Because when he focused on the problem of pain, that was what got them, first it got Kundanya, and then the remainder of the five brethren, that brought them to stream entry. Then he turned on the issue of I. Who is this I? What is his purpose? Now some people will say, I'd like to go straight to analyzing the I. But you're going to have to deal with pain first. Once you've understood how you create these things around, how you create these conversations around your pain, okay, then you can turn around and say, okay, what is this? Who is this me here who's been talking? Who's talking to whom in here? And take that apart.
Thanks. I think it's a good approach to progress stepwise.
Yeah, Ajahn, thank you very much for your teaching. So when I meditate, when there's a lot of pain, sometimes I feel like my leg might fall off, or like I'll get injury from sitting for a really long time. Like the leg just a lot of pain. So most of the time I can watch it and able to meditate for longer as the time that I want to set for myself. But sometimes there's also the list. I don't just want to ask whether has anyone actually have injury from sitting for a really long time. And also, I heard that when we are dying at that time, there's going to be a lot of pains that come up, at the moment of death, a lot of pain. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know anyone who sat and meditated until their legs fell off.
Thank you.
I mean, there are cases where people who have, knee injuries and they push themselves too hard. You have to watch out for that. Yeah. But aside from that, if you found, okay, I sit there and there is this intense pain, but when I get up, I can walk around after a while and I'm okay. The next time it comes, you say, okay, last time around, I lied to myself that this was going to happen. I couldn't be able to. So this time I want to learn how to sit with it. But sitting with it, don't just endure it. You have to analyze, okay, what are my perceptions around the pain? This voice inside me that's talking about the pain, why do I have to listen to it? Because you see, oftentimes, sometimes it's the perception that maintains the pain. And if you can drop the perception, the pain goes away. So take this not as an opportunity just to endure the pain, but as an opportunity to understand how the mind relates to the pain in a way that creates more suffering.
Good evening, Ajahn. Thanks for the talk. I have a question regarding how do we take care of our parents who are diagnosed with critical illness.
Diagnosed with what?
Diagnosed with critical illness.
Okay.
And also, how do we deal with the feeling of guilt when it comes to advising our parents on the solution to take? So my mom is diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and we managed to prolong her decision to take Western medicine for 4 months. But recently, the doctor advised her to take the Western medicine. So she asked me, okay, what should she do? Should she continue traditional Chinese medicine or Western? I think when she asked me that, I was hesitant to reply because I know that at the end of the day, I might have guilt if I advise this way and another. So this is the first part of the question. The second part is how do we help her to shift, how do I help our parents to shift perspective? So like I try to get her to pray to Guan Yin, which is something more relatable to her. It's quite hilarious because I bought the Guan Yin tape for her and she ended up playing the Guan Yin music to the Guan Yin instead of herself. So I was telling her that actually she should listen rather than let Guan Yin listen, because Guan Yin don't need to listen already. so these are just like fun ways to, like I find it quite hilarious in the journey, but also I'm struggling to help our aged and sick parents. Yeah.
Okay, with feelings of guilt, I mean, the only thing you would feel guilty about is if you wanted her to die fast. I mean, you could choose, you could recommend TCM or you could recommend Western medicine. In both cases, it would be with good intentions. And because you don't know which one would actually be better for her, then whichever way it comes out, you can say, well, I just didn't know. There's no real need for guilt around that. And if there is a part of the mind that insists on feeling guilty, you say, okay, where are you coming from? What is your intention? Why would I hold on to this? And as for other things to give her to distract her, I mean, you don't want to be totally distracted. You want to give her some good advice on how to handle the pain, how to handle whatever disappointments she had that she didn't get to live longer. And we keep reminding ourselves, and the important thing is, we'll be talking a little bit about this tomorrow, is that you want to keep it from her getting worried about either where she's going or worried about the people she's leaving behind. And she may be worried about you, you know. And she thinks that my daughter is still, when she looks at you, she still sees this little tiny bundle, right, that came out of her. And so she may be afraid that, you wouldn't be able to handle yourself, the rest of the family won't be able to handle themselves. So do what you can to put her mind to rest about that. And try to find out, get her to talk about, are there any things that she's worried about? And then do the best you can to calm her mind around those issues. And if she's kind of thrashing around not knowing what to do, she said, well, there's such a thing as breath meditation. You can focus on your breath. And try to breathe comfortably. That'll give her something to occupy her awareness with. But in terms of choosing what kind of medical course of treatment, there's no need for guilt. Is everybody satisfied? Question in the back.
Hi, Ajahn. I would like to know, for the three perceptions, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, what are skillful ways to use them, and what are unskillful ways to use them? Thank you.
Okay, well, the unskillful ways are really easy to talk about. I knew one Ajahn in Thailand who was riding somebody's car, in somebody's truck, and the truck was really, really dirty. And the Ajahn just couldn't help his commenting, why do you never clean your truck? And the driver said, Anichang, Ajahn. You clean it, it gets dirty again. And unskillful anatta is, okay, who did this? There's nobody here is responsible. So the skillful use is, you're going to be learning to let go in stages. So the first thing you want to let go of is unskillful thoughts, unskillful habits. You use the three perceptions to focus on what unskillful behavior you have, or the unskillful things that you're attached to, so that you can learn how to let go. But there will be certain things that you're going to be doing as part of the practice. You want to hold on to your precepts, you want to hold on to your concentration, you want to hold on to your insights. So you don't let those go yet. Those are not, you don't apply those three perceptions there. Another, I mean, so there's some serious wrong applications of anatta. In the time of the Buddha, there was this one monk who was hearing the Buddha talking about how the five aggregates are not self. And his first thought was, gee, if there's no self, then who's going to be responsible for the action? Who's going to be harmed by the action? It basically comes down to the idea there's nobody there, so it doesn't matter what you do. That's a very unskillful use of anatta. The skillful use would be, is I've been identifying with this thing and it's causing harm. Why do I identify with it? What gets accomplished? So you let go. You let go of the path only when it's totally done its work. Ajahn Chah gives a good example. He says, you're coming back from the market, you've got a banana in your hand. Someone comes up and asks you, why are you carrying the banana? And you say, I'm carrying it because I'm going to eat it. And then they ask you, are you going to eat the peel? No. Then why are you carrying the peel? And then Ajahn Chah asks, okay, with what would you answer that person? And his answer is interesting. It's a two-step answer. First is, you answer with desire. You want to give a good answer. So the desire is an important part of the path. And the second is, of course, the time hasn't come to let go of the peel yet. When I eat the banana, then I throw away the peel. So think in those terms. Because if you throw away the peel and you just hold the banana in your hand, it's going to be mush, you know. Okay, well, thank you for your attention. Oh, wait a minute, before you sign it, one more.
Thank you, Ajahn. Yeah, so the question is, may I know if, sorry, can you all hear me? Okay. Yeah, question is, may I know if there's like a lot of pain at the point of death?
Some people experience a lot of pain, some people seem to go painlessly. Said some people experience a lot of pain, some people go painlessly.
Thank you.
But be prepared. Okay, now you can sadhu as much as you want.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.